Hello everyone. Please tell me, which city are you listening from? What time is it there? Is everything okay? Or does it feel like someone's watching you? It was an old wool blanket, thick, heavy gray, with black trim, the kind of blanket you imagine soldiers wrapped in during winter wars. I found it at a flea market outside of town, folded neatly on a wooden bench among boxes of forgotten clothes and odd antiques. The seller was an old man with shaking hands and a raspy voice. When I picked up the blanket, he froze. "That one's not for sale," he mumbled. "But it's in the pile," I said. He looked away and shrugged. $5, but don't say I didn't warn you. I laughed, thinking he was just trying to be spooky. I wish I'd listened the first night. I used the blanket. It smelled like dust, and something else, something faint and metallic. Like old pennies or dried blood. I shrugged it off, thinking it just needed a wash. I draped it over myself and fell asleep faster than usual. It was warm. Unnaturally warm, in fact, not just against my body, but around it. Like being hugged by something that didn't want to let go. And then the dreams began. I was standing in a dim room, wooden floors creaking beneath me, walls covered in faded floral wallpaper. A cold draft drifted from an open doorway ahead. In the center of the room was a table. On the table lay a body covered in a blanket, the same blanket. I took a step forward and the body twitched. Not much, just a slight jerk of the arm. I woke up, gasping, drenched in sweat. I didn't use the blanket the next night, folded it up, left it on the chair, but at 3:12 a.m. I woke up, freezing, teeth chattering, breath fogging in my room, even though the heater was on, and the blanket, it was back on me, perfectly spread, perfectly tucked. Like someone had placed it there while I slept. From that night on it returned, no matter where I left it. In the closet, in a drawer locked in my car, it always found its way back, and with it the dreams grew longer, clearer. I saw more of the room. Saw figures in black suits and veils, mourning, whispering, crying, but none of them had faces. Eventually I stayed awake for 3 straight nights, caffeine, lights, cold water, but on the 4th night I passed out from exhaustion, and this time I didn't dream. This time I remembered I was lying on the table, covered in the blanket, unable to move, eyes wide open, watching people I didn't recognize shuffle past. Their mouths moved, like they were crying, but no sound came out. Their faces melted into one another, blurry and hollow. One of them leaned close, whispered, "You weren't supposed to wake up." I jolted awake and screamed. My arms and legs were stiff, like I'd been lying still for hours. My fingers were purple, my lips numb. The blanket was wrapped tight around me. Too tight. I had to cut myself free with scissors. I tried burning it, but the flame refused to catch. The wool blackened at the edges, but it wouldn't burn. I tried dumping it in the river. It washed up at my doorstep the next morning, damp and folded. I took it back to the flea market. The old man was gone. I asked around. One vendor said, "Oh, the guy who used to sit there, he passed away last year." I think my stomach turned. I went home and finally checked the label sewn inside the blanket. It was worn and faded, but I made out the name: Roth Sons Funeral Home, 1934. I looked it up. The building still existed, but it was abandoned, boarded up decades ago. After a fire, the same floral wallpaper from my dreams had once lined its viewing room. I visited, I don't know why, maybe to return the blanket where it belonged. The air inside was thick with mold and silence, and at the back of the burned-out chapel was a single table, dust-covered, empty. I left the blanket there, said nothing, didn't even look back. That night I slept without it, and I didn't dream for the first time in weeks. I felt peace until The next morning when I opened my closet and found it folded on the top shelf dry clean, and somehow warmer than ever now, I don't sleep with it, but I can't throw it away. I tried, believe me, I've tried, and every time I do, I wake up on that table again. And every time it takes longer to leave. I'm afraid that one night soon I won't wake up at all, that it'll stay on that table under that heavy gray blanket. As people with no faces cry over me and whisper, "You weren't supposed to wake up." I moved into the new apartment at the end of September. It wasn't fancy, but it was cheap, and I needed a fresh start. The previous tenant had moved out in a hurry, apparently left behind some furniture, including a large bed in the master room. The landlord asked if I wanted it gone. I said no. It looked clean, almost new, with a thick frame and soft headboard. Better than anything I could afford. I bought new bed sheets, a warm blanket, and told myself this would be home now, but I didn't know the bed was already taken. The first night was fine, nothing unusual, just the soft creak of an unfamiliar room settling around me. I fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the move, but around 3:00 a.m., I woke up gasping for breath. Not like a nightmare, it felt like something was on my chest. Heavy, cold, suffocating. I turned on the light. Nothing there. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Even the sound of the city outside was muffled. I chalked it up to stress and went back to sleep. The second night it happened. Again, same time, same pressure on my chest, but this time I heard breathing, not mine, not loud, just slow, shallow breaths. Next to me on the bed, I turned quickly. Nothing. But the sheets were wrinkled as if someone had just shifted their weight. I started. Sleeping with the lights on didn't help. The pressure grew worse, and one night I felt a hand, not warm, not soft, cold, thin fingers that gripped, not held. They pressed against my chest like they were trying to push me down into the mattress. I screamed. But no sound came out, and when I woke up, really woke up, I was lying on the floor beside the bed, as if I'd rolled off in my panic. But I didn't remember moving. I asked the landlord if anything strange had happened in the apartment before I moved. He hesitated, then said the last guy, he broke his lease early, said he couldn't sleep, claimed something was in the room. I asked what he meant by something. The landlord just shrugged and walked away. I bought salt candles, an old book on warding off spirits. I sprinkled salt across the edges of the mattress. Placed protective symbols under the bed. That night I slept without waking up. I thought it was over, until the next morning I lifted the sheet and saw all the salt was gone, not scattered. Not spilled, just missing, as if it had been collected a few nights later. I had the worst dream of my life. I was lying in bed, unable to move the room. Around me was darker than night, and I wasn't alone. Something lay beside me, pressed against my back. I couldn't see it, but I felt it. Cold, heavy skin like wet paper. It wrapped one arm around me and whispered directly into my ear. "You took my place." I woke up screaming. The sheet was pulled completely off me, and there was an indent on the other side of the bed like someone had just gotten up. I decided to get rid of the bed, called the junk removal company. They came the next morning. To guys, they struggled with it. Said it was heavier than it looked when they lifted the mattress off the frame. I saw something ill. Never forget scratches, hundreds of them, all along the inside of the frame, deep grooves. As if someone had been trapped inside the bed, clawing to get out. One of the workers looked at me and said, "Jesus man, what happened here?" I didn't answer that night. I slept on the couch, but I still woke up at 3:00 a.m. Still felt the cold air, still heard breathing. I checked the bedroom. It was empty. But the floor was damp, and there was a shape under the blanket. Even though the bed was gone, I moved out 2 days later. Lost my deposit, didn't care, but sometimes I still feel it. That pressure, that cold weight beside me, that whisper. You took my place. I bought a brand new bed, burned the old blanket, moved to a different part of the city, but every night, no matter where I sleep, at exactly 300 a.m., the mattress dips beside me, and I hear breathing shallow, close to close. I bought the mirror at a garage sale on a Sunday afternoon. It was leaning against a tree, dusty and tall, with a dark wooden frame carved in twisting floral patterns. There was something elegant about it, almost royal, the kind of mirror you'd expect to find in an old castle, not next to a box of broken toys and mismatched teacups. The woman selling it smiled when I picked it up. "Be careful with that," she said, "it's old." I asked how old. She didn't answer, just looked away, and said it belonged to my grandmother. She always said it showed more than it should. She laughed after that, but I don't think it was a joke. I hung it in my bedroom later that evening. It fit perfectly between the two windows. At night, when I turned off the light and passed by, I could see my silhouette reflected in the moonlight. For a moment, it made me feel classy, like I'd added something timeless to the room. I didn't notice anything strange at first, but after a few days things began to feel off. It started small. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror to brush my hair, and my reflection didn't move quite in sync with me. There was a half-second delay. Almost like lag on a video call. I blinked, it blinked later. I smiled, it smiled. Wrong, too wide, too sharp, too long. Then it caught up, and everything looked normal again. I told myself it was nothing, maybe. I was tired, but that night, as I was walking to bed, I caught something strange in the reflection. Not me, not my room, something else. It was only for a second, a flicker, but the mirror showed a version of my room that was darker, older, dustier, and there was someone standing in the corner still watching. I turned around quickly. The room was empty. I stopped looking into the mirror at night. I avoided it, covered it with a sheet, but every morning the sheet was pulled off and neatly folded at the base. I lived alone. No one else had keys. Soon the mirror started showing things that hadn't happened yet. Once it showed me walking into the room with a cup of coffee. Before I had actually done it, I stood there staring, frozen. Then 5 seconds later, I walked in with the coffee in my hand, just like in the reflection. I dropped the cup. It shattered, but the mirror kept showing me holding it, smiling, sipping. That's when I realized the reflection wasn't always me. Some nights I'd glance at the mirror and see myself standing perfectly still while I moved. Sometimes it would smile while I cried. Once I saw my reflection behind me, even though I was facing the mirror. Another time I turned away from the mirror, but my reflection didn't. It just kept staring. Even as I left the room, I tried covering it again, taping it to the wall, even moving it into the basement, but no matter where I put it, the mirror always reappeared in the same spot in my bedroom the next morning, exactly centered between the windows, exactly spotless, like it never left. One night, I woke up around 300 a.m., not because of a sound, but because I felt like something was watching me. I turned toward the mirror and saw my reflection already staring at me, eyes open, unblinking, smiling. I wasn't smiling, I wasn't even moving. But the reflection lifted a hand and waved. I stayed completely still, then it mouthed something soon. I screamed and threw a heavy blanket over it. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When I opened my eyes at sunrise, the blanket was folded again, the mirror uncovered, and the reflection, it had bags under its eyes, like it hadn't slept either, except I didn't have those, not yet. I did everything I could. I called a priest. I burned sage. I even hired someone to take it away. But the man who showed up walked into the room, looked at the mirror for less than 5 seconds, and left without saying a word. He didn't take it, didn't charge me, just walked away. pale face and shaking. That night I watched the mirror, sat across from it for hours, and something happened I can't explain. My reflection stepped out of sync again, but this time, it kept going. It turned and walked toward me. I didn't move, but it did closer and closer. Then it pressed its hands against the inside of the glass, and smiled wider than any human mouth could stretch. And I swear I heard it whisper, "You're the reflection now." I blinked, everything returned to normal, but I didn't feel like myself anymore. I look in the mirror now, and I see something off, a tiny twitch, a grin that comes to easily eyes that don't quite match mine. And when I turn around quickly, sometimes I catch myself looking back at me from behind the glass, still trapped, still waiting. I found the dream catcher at a roadside antique shop during a drive through a quiet mountain town. The place had barely any signage, just a crooked, open board hanging from a nail and shelves of dusty trinkets that looked like they hadn't moved in decades. It hung in the far corner of the shop. Unlike the others made of feathers and colorful beads, this one was different. Its web was black, tightly woven like a spider's trap. The hoop was wrapped in dark thread, and instead of feathers, it had small bones dangling from it, maybe bird or squirrel. I couldn't stop staring. How much? I asked the shopkeeper. He didn't smile, just said, "It's not for dreaming." I asked again, and he finally said, "If you take it, don't let it face the window, don't sleep under it." On the third night, I laughed, thinking he was being dramatic. He didn't laugh with me. I should have left it there. The first night, I hung it above my bed, just like people do, hoping for deeper sleep, and honestly it worked. I slept hard, no dreams. No tossing, just a deep, quiet nothing. When I woke up, I felt like I had been gone for days. The second night was different. I started dreaming, but it wasn't a normal dream. It was too vivid. I was standing in a long hallway, lined with hundreds of all of them swaying in a breeze. I couldn't feel my footsteps, made no sound. The walls stretched endlessly like I was walking through time itself. At the very end was a door. A mirror was nailed to it, but my reflection wasn't right. It blinked when I didn't. It stepped forward when I didn't move. Then it smiled and whispered, "Night 3 is when you stay." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. And for a second, I thought I saw the reflection from the dream, still looking at me in my bedroom mirror. I didn't want to sleep on the third night, but my body gave in, heavy, drained, like the dream catcher had been feeding on my energy. I thought I stayed awake, but I must be blinked, because I was back in that hallway, only this time the walls were closing. And all the dream catchers on the walls had eyes in the center of their webs, hundreds of blinking, watching eyes following me. Judging, waiting, I ran, but the hallway never ended. I screamed, no sound. Then I saw the door again, but this time it was open. And inside was a room, my room, but not quite. It was empty, and something was curled up in my bed. It looked like me, but wrong. Its skin was gray, its limbs too long, and it turned its head to me and whispered, "You've been caught." I jolted awake at least. I thought I did. My room looked the same. My clock blinked 3:33 a.m. The dream catcher hung perfectly still. I touched the wall solid. I breathed normal. But when I looked in the mirror, my reflection blinked too late again and smiled. Then I noticed something else. My body didn't feel right, like I was wearing clothes that didn't fit, too tight, too heavy. I walked to the kitchen, the lights flickered. My phone had no signal, and the fridge was empty, even though I had just stocked it. I opened the front door. Outside was just black, no sky, no stars, no air, just nothing. I wasn't awake. I was still dreaming. I ran back to the bedroom and grabbed the dream catcher to tear it down. But my hand went through it like smoke. I looked at my hand, and for the first time I noticed it wasn't my hand, the skin was cracking like old paper. I wasn't real anymore. I was part of the dream. I screamed, no sound. I tried calling myself. My phone showed my number. I hit dial on the other end. I heard my voice say, "He can't come." To the phone, haze, dreaming now, then laughter and static. I tried to wake myself up, tried biting my hand, punching the walls, running into the mirror. Nothing worked. Time doesn't pass here. I can't tell how long I've been inside. Maybe hours, maybe days, maybe forever. I see the door again sometimes, and someone opens it. I see flashes of my real bedroom. I see someone lying in my bed, living my life, wearing my face. He gets up, brushes my teeth, smiles in the mirror, answers my phone, talks to my friends. But his eyes aren't mine, they're hollow, empty, and I realize, haze not a dream, haze the thing that escaped when I got caught. So now I sit in this hallway of dreamcatchers, in the quiet dark, watching the door, waiting for someone else to hang the wrong one. Maybe then I can trade places again, maybe then I can come back. Until then, I whisper through dreams. If you hear it, please don't sleep under anything you didn't buy new. Because once a dream catcher catches you, it doesn't let go. When I moved into the old apartment on Rosewood Lane, I wasn't looking for much, just peace, a new start. The breakup had left me hollow, and I needed space emotionally and physically. So when I found a small one-bedroom unit with antique wooden floors, old fixtures and vintage furniture, it felt right, like something stable, something still. The landlord, Mr. Fletcher, was an old man who lived in the basement unit. He didn't talk much, just handed me the keys and said some things in this place, remember. I thought he was just being cryptic, maybe lonely, maybe drunk. I wish I had taken it seriously. The apartment came fully furnished, which was perfect because I had almost nothing left. The centerpiece of the bedroom was the bed, a heavy oak frame, with thick beams, a headboard carved with flower patterns worn smooth by time. The mattress looked clean, the sheets folded. But there was something about it I couldn't place. The bed looked too settled, like someone had just left it, like someone might come back that night. I laid on the bed and stared at the ceiling fan, turning slowly above. I thought about my ex, about the apartment we shared, about the silence of this new place. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. It was 300 a.m. I was frozen in place, not from fear, but from weight. There was pressure on my chest, not sharp like anxiety, heavy, like someone was sitting on me. My eyes scanned the room, nothing there, no sound, just the creaking of the old fan, but I could feel it, like knees pressed against my ribs, fingers brushing my shoulders. Then suddenly relief, the weight vanished. I sat up, panting, sweating, my heart crashing against my ribs. I turned on the lamp. The room was empty, but the sheets beside me were wrinkled, as if someone had just gotten up. I tried to convince myself it was a dream, stress, sleep paralysis, all the rational things. But the next morning I found something else, a hair on the pillow beside me, long black, not mine. I shaved my head 6 months ago. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. The next few nights were uneventful. I drank tea, kept a nightlight on, even said a little prayer before bed. But every night at 303 I would wake up, sometimes with the weight again, sometimes with breathing sounds beside me, always with the feeling that I wasn't alone. It wasn't until the 5th night that I saw her. It began with a creak from the floorboards, then a slow shifting sound like someone rolling over in bed. I turned over and she was lying beside me, a woman, pale skin, lips dark as bruises, eyes completely black, like the reflection of water at night. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then she said, not out loud, but into my mind, "You're warm." He was always cold. I couldn't scream, couldn't Moo, she leaned in, her hair fell across my neck. I felt her breath on my ear, and then I passed out. I woke in daylight, drenched in sweat, clutching the edge of the mattress for the first time. I noticed the carvings underneath the headboard, tiny. Letters etched in the wood, dozens of them names, some faded, some fresh. My name was not among them yet. I went to Mr. Fletcher's unit that morning. His eyes were already on me. You saw her, he said. I didn't even speak yet. She shows herself when she likes. Someone I asked who she was, he sighed. Her name was Lily. She lived in 7B, that same bed her fiancé went off to war. Never came back. She waited, died in that bed. Some say she still waits. My mouth went dry. Why didn't you get rid of it, I asked. I did, he whispered twice. It came back both times I tried to leave that day, packed a bag, called a cab. But when I opened the front door, the hallway wasn't the same. The wallpaper was peeling, lights flickered. And down at the far end, Lillian stood. In a black wedding dress, veil hanging like a shroud, staring right at me. She lifted her hand and pointed back toward my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed. I didn't know why I obeyed, but some part of me understood her. She was lonely that night. I didn't resist. When she appeared, she lay beside me, her body colder than the air, her fingers touching mine. She whispered memories, names of people I didn't know, places I'd never seen. She spoke of trains, telegrams, lost letters, and all the while, I could feel something slipping in my mind, like I was forgetting myself. My name, my voice, my past. At 303, I opened my eyes. I was standing by the bed looking down at me, sleeping, except I wasn't sure that was me anymore. The face was similar but tired. Empty. My body moved without me. Lillian stood beside me. You're home now, she said, and we lay back down into him. I screamed but no sound came. Only the creaking of the bed, and still here inside, watching each night. I wake up in someone else's body, some new tenant. Lillian always finds one. She always comes back, and the bed, it's never really empty. If you ever see a cheap ad for a fully furnished apartment with a carved oak bed, don't move in, no matter how quiet it seems. You're not the first to sleep there, and you won't be the last. I didn't bring much with me when I moved into the old cottage, just a duffel bag of clothes, a laptop, a coffee mug, and a stubborn belief that I needed to get away from everything: city noise, people, memories. The cottage was tucked in the woods, rented out by a quiet woman in her 60s named Ruth Writers. Like it here, she said, the forest helps with thinking. It was true, peaceful. No traffic, no streetlights, just wind, leaves, and birds. But on the first night I noticed something strange. A clock sat on the nightstand beside the bed, round, metallic, old-fashioned, the kind with 2 bells on top, and a hammer between them. It was already ticking when I arrived. I didn't touch it, I didn't set it, but that night as I drifted off, it rang violently. At 2:02 a.m., the sound jolted me awake. The bells were so loud, they echoed inside my chest. I sat up, startled, heart racing. The clock glowed faintly in the dark, ticking again like nothing happened. I reached over to turn it off, but it wasn't set to ring. No alarm lever pulled, no light, no setting, just ticking. I brushed it off. Maybe it was broken, maybe the gears were stuck. The next day I unplugged it, took out the battery, just in case. But that night, at 2:02 a.m. sharp, the clock rang again, loud, sharp, angry, only this time, it wasn't just sound. I smelled something: burnt wood, like charred timber, old smoke. The room was cold, colder than before. My breath fogged in front of me. Even though it was a warm summer night, I turned on the light. The battery was still out, the plug still unplugged, yet the clock was ticking. The hands now stuck at 202, trembling. The next morning, I told Ruth. Her face went pale. You heard it already, she asked. I nodded. She sat down and stared at the floor. I should have told you that clock's been here longer than me. I leave it because if I remove it, things escalate. I frowned. What things? She looked at me, eyes tired. It starts with ringing, then the cold, then they try to come through. I didn't ask who they were. She simply said, don't break it, don't bury it, just listen when it rings. I tried moving the clock to another room. That night, I locked it in the kitchen drawer, but at 2:02 a.m., the ringing came again, from right beside my bed. And this time, someone was standing at the edge of the room. I could see the outline, a man, tall, thin, his body flickering like smoke. He didn't move, but the moment I made eye contact, the room shuddered, the bed tilted, groaning like something heavy had climbed on top of it. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, just listen to that damn clock shrieking beside me. Then silence. In the morning, the clock was on the nightstand again, ticking peacefully, set to 202. I searched the attic that afternoon. I don't know why, something about the clock felt rooted in the house. In a box of old papers and books, I found a journal from 1937. Inside were faded pages, entries from someone named Eleanor T. Mason, a schoolteacher who once lived here. Most of it was normal lesson plans, thoughts, gardening tips, until the last page. I heard the bell again at 2:02. He stands in the doorway every night. He gets closer. I told Henry not to touch the clock. He threw it in the fire. It rang anyway. Then it wasn't Henry anymore. The page was torn after that, but someone had scribbled in red ink beneath it, listen to the ring, or he listens to you. That night I stayed awake, watched the clock tick past 200, tick tick tick, then ring ring ringing, and he was there again, only this time he wasn't in the corner. He was right at the foot of my bed, smiling. I screamed, but no sound came. He stepped forward, each footstep cracked the floor, and in his hand, not a knife, not a weapon, just a second clock, identical, ticking in sync. He set it beside mine. Now 2 clocks ticked, and when I blinked, he was gone. It's been 6 nights. Every night both clocks ring at 2:02 a.m. The air gets colder. I hear footsteps outside my room, scratching in the walls. Last night I woke up with mud on my sheets, as if someone had been crawling across the bed. I tried leaving the house today, but the car battery was dead. My phone won't charge. My laptop turns off at 2:02 p.m. every day, now exactly 12 hours before the ringing. I can't sleep. I don't want to hear the third clock because I know it's coming, and when it rings, he won't leave again. I never liked candles. I preferred electric lights, steady, predictable, no mess. But the cottage I rented for my writing retreat had no working power. The first week, the caretaker, a quiet man named Elias, said the generator would be fixed soon. Until then it was just me, the cold, and a box of wax candles he left in the pantry. They were old, each wrapped in yellowing parchment. A strange, musty smell clung to them like forgotten basements and rain-damp wood, but I needed light, so I lit one the first night. I sat at the wooden desk by the window and wrote. The candlelight flickered oddly, like something moved between the flame and the wall, though no one else was in the house. As the wax began to melt, I noticed something strange. The wax wasn't pooling smoothly, it formed shapes. At first I thought it was my imagination, just the way melted wax runs and hardens. But no, a face began to appear, tiny smooth eyes, closed lips curved downward. A child's face, soft and eerie, half submerged in the melting candle. I stared, not blinking. Then the flame flared and the face melted away. I told myself it was stress. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. Writers see things, but the next night it happened again. Different candle, different face. This one an old woman, wrinkled mouth open in what looked like a silent scream. The features appeared only when the wax dripped low, then vanished again as the flame danced by the third night. I stopped writing, I just watched the candles every one I lit melted into. A face, each unique, some male, some female, some young, some twisted, deformed, a man with no mouth, a girl with eyes too large. They looked real, detailed, too detailed, like they were remembered, captured in wax as they once were. I tried not lighting any more, used my phone's flashlight, kept the candles locked in the pantry, but I still saw them on the walls, in reflections, even in dreams. Faces floating in the dark, whispering in voices I didn't recognize. We burned to you, lit our names, you invited them back. I went to Elias. He didn't speak right away, just sipped tea and looked out at the woods. Then he said there was a fire here. Before the cottage was rebuilt, I froze. He continued, long ago a church stood where this place is now, small wooden. It caught during a winter sermon, no one escaped. I asked him about the candles. He looked at me, eyes hollow. They're made from the church candles. Found them in the earth, when they dug the new foundation, mixed in the old wax, the villagers thought it respectful to reuse them. I felt sick. How many died? I asked. He paused. 23 that night. I counted the candles left in the box. 23. I had lit 6 so far, 17 remained. I didn't sleep. I stared at the sealed pantry at midnight. I heard them, the voices. Light me finish. Us complete the circle. I boarded the pantry shut, drove to the nearest town, booked a hotel room. No candles, no wax, no whispers. For 3 nights I slept, then on the 4th night I woke up to flickering light. I looked to the nightstand. A candle sat there, half-melted face in the wax. My own eyes closed, lips parted like I was sleeping or melting. The candle wasn't mine. No one had been in the room. I ran to the front desk, panicked. The receptionist blinked at me and said, "Sir, you lit it yourself. When you checked in, you asked for a candle." I didn't. I never would, but there it was. Room security footage showed me calmly placing the candle on the table, striking a match, watching it burn, smiling. I tried leaving the town that morning. Every road twisted back, signs blurred, gas stations vanished. The sun didn't rise properly, just hovered orange and dull like wax itself. Now I understand. The candles don't just show the dead, they choose the next. And the more I resist, the more they melt me. I lit one last night. The wax poured into a familiar shape, my mother's face, then my own again, then nothing. Just the sound of fire crackling where there was no flame. I think tonight is the last. The wax is gone, the candles are finished, except one, a new one. I can feel it inside me, forming, waiting to be lit. I was never one to hold on to childhood things. When I moved out of my parents' house, I left most of it behind: books, toys, even photos. But for some reason, I packed one thing: Teddy. He was small, brown, and worn. His left arm was loose and the fur on his ears had rubbed away, but he had always been there, through every sickness, every nightmare, every move. I didn't even think. When I threw him in the box, it felt natural, like he still belonged. The first week in the new apartment was fine, quiet. Building tiny kitchen, creaky floors. I put Teddy on the shelf beside my bed. He sat like he always had, floppy, harmless, until Thursday night. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a sound from the bedroom, a soft thump. I walked in slowly, nothing except Teddy had fallen off the shelf onto the center of the bed. Maybe the vibration from the nearby train, I thought. Maybe I bumped something earlier. I put him back. That night, I had a dream. I was 6 years old again, in my childhood bedroom. The lights were out. Teddy was in my arms, but he was heavy. I looked down at him in the dream, and saw his face shift. His stitched smile bent into a frown. His eyes, normally black beads, were wide alive. He whispered in a voice like wind between teeth, "You shouldn't have come back." I woke up sweating, and Teddy was on my pillow the next morning. I decided to check him. Just to be sure, I took out a pair of scissors and sat at the kitchen table as I snipped the threads on his back. Seam a puff of old stuffing came out, dusty yellowed. Then something harder, round. I reached in and pulled it out. It was an eyeball, a real human-looking eye. Dry, discolored, but unmistakably real. I dropped it on the table and screamed. It rolled to the edge and fell, hitting the floor with a soft, wet thud. I called the police. They didn't take it seriously. By the time they arrived, the eye was gone. Teddy sat on the shelf again, unopened, as if I'd never touched him. The police left with a warning about prank calls. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next few days, things got worse. I started seeing things, movements, and mirrors. Faint whispers when I walked by the bedroom. Teddy never stayed where I left him one night. I came home to find him sitting at the kitchen table, a fork in one paw, my phone unlocked in the other. My screen showed a picture of me asleep, taken at 3:14 a.m. I tried to burn him. I lit the fireplace and tossed him in. He didn't burn. He just sat in the flames, completely still, watching his bead. Eyes glinted red. When I reached for the poker, I burned my hand, but not from the fire. The handle was cold, ice cold. That night, I had another dream. I was in a hospital. White walls, empty halls. Teddy sat on the bed, beside a child, a boy I didn't recognize. Pale, thin. Doctors spoke behind glass. The boy doesn't talk, but the bear, he says things through the bear. The child turned and looked at me. His eyes were different colors. One of them was mine. I woke up screaming. I found Teddy lying on my chest, heavy, wet, like something was growing inside. I threw him across the room. He hit the wall and groaned. Not a sound from impact, a sound from inside. I cut him open again, desperately. This time, I pulled out a tooth, a lock of hair, a child's drawing, a folded name tag, property of Daniel Ward 9B. I searched the name online, and I found him. A child who went missing 20 years ago from a psychiatric ward in the same city. Never found. All he left behind, a teddy bear. I called my mother, asked her where she got Teddy. She was quiet then. She said, "You didn't have that bear when you were little. You found him, remember, at the edge of the woods. You were 5. I didn't remember that, but something in me did, something deeper, like I wasn't the first to hold him. Just the next I tried burying him in the forest, 6 feet down. No markers, no goodbye. I came home. Teddy was on my bed. A single note stitched to his chest. I live in those who remember, and I remember too much now. The dreams, the voices, the other eyes, I see them all when I close my own. Now every time I blink, I feel something moving behind my eyelids, watching, rotating, waiting. I think the eye I found wasn't someone else's. I think it was mine, the one Teddy took in the dream. And if you ever find an old teddy bear lying somewhere strange, don't pick it up. He only needs one more part to become real. I found the clock at a flea market. It wasn't what I was looking for. I was just browsing, wasting a lazy Saturday, when I saw it sitting alone on a dusty table among old cassette players and chipped porcelain cats. It was small, matte black, digital display with red glowing numbers. No brand, no buttons, just a screen, and under the screen, one word etched into the plastic. Ready. Something about it intrigued me. It wasn't for sale. The old woman running the booth said it had just appeared there that morning. She shrugged and said, "Take it. Some things find who they're meant for." I should have walked away, but I didn't. I brought it home. That night I placed it on my nightstand. It was 10:24 p.m. The clock flickered, buzzed faintly, then reset the screen. now showed 03:03 hours, but it wasn't showing the time. It was counting down. I stared at it for a while, no way to adjust it, no settings. I laughed to my Zulfmaid. It was just a weird timer. Maybe it was broken. I left it there and went to sleep. At exactly 30,000, the alarm went off. A sound like no alarm I'd heard before. It wasn't a beep. It was a whisper, a voice low, and fast, and overlapping with itself. Thousands of whispers pouring from a single speaker. I shot up and yanked the plug from the socket. The sound stopped, but the clock kept glowing, still showing zeros, still whispering faintly. And then it changed next. 06000. I didn't sleep. I tried turning the clock off, smashing it, removing the battery. Nothing worked. The screen flickered and returned to a new countdown. Each time the alarm went off, something happened. At 06000, every picture frame in my apartment had flipped itself face down. At 09000, the mirror in my bathroom cracked diagonally. Nothing had touched it. At 12000, the whispers became voices, clear, angry. You brought it back. We remember you this time. You want to wake up. I called my friend Marcus, an electrical engineer. He came over curious. He studied the clock, opened it. No circuits, no chips, no wires, just dark. Packed soil inside, damp, and something pale curled in the center. Marcus didn't speak for a while. Then he said, "This isn't a machine. What is it then?" I asked. He looked at me with a pale face and said, "I don't think you brought it home. I think it followed you." At 150,000, all the doors in my apartment locked themselves. My phone went dead. Windows wouldn't open. The lights dimmed. The clock kept ticking. I started hallucinating, dreaming. I saw a man standing by the edge of my bed. His skin was covered in ash, eyes dark and sunken. His lips didn't move, but I heard him tick-tock, tick-tock. "The hours are yours, but the end is mine." I begged Ruth, my landlord, to help. She brought a priest. He sprinkled holy water on the clock. The water boiled the clock. Cracked, slight-lined. Something red leaked from the side. Not plastic, not liquid blood. The screen glowed brighter. Final. 3,000, half an hour. I tried throwing it away into the river, but it was on my bed again when I got home, still counting down, still whispering. And now my name was in the whispers, clear, constant. Derek, Derek. It's time. I ran. Hotel, motel, didn't matter. It followed. It was always on the nightstand when I woke up, even when I hadn't brought it, even when I didn't sleep. And now there's no time left. The clock reads 00003, 0002. 1. The alarm is going off, but I don't hear it because the room is gone. The walls are gone. I am not in my body. I am in the countdown. Trapped inside the silence between seconds. The clock resets now. Every day it waits on someone's table. Sometimes it appears in flea markets, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in your room. If you ever see a black digital clock with glowing red numbers and no buttons and the word ready carved underneath, don't touch it, or your time starts to When Grandma passed away, no one wanted her chair. It had been in her living room for as long as I could remember. A massive old recliner with faded blue upholstery, deep creases, and wooden armrests worn smooth from decades of use. It smelled faintly of lavender and something else I couldn't place. Old wood. Maybe everyone avoided it, even during visits, but after the funeral, my mother insisted. Take something of hers, just one thing. She always said you were her favorite. I didn't want her jewelry or the creepy porcelain dolls, so I took the chair. It arrived in my apartment a week later. The deliverymen joked as they hauled it in. This thing's heavier than it looks, feels like it doesn't want to move. They laughed. I didn't because they were right. The chair looked like it hadn't moved in years, and didn't want to, but I placed it by the window in the corner of my living room. It felt respectful. That night I fell asleep on the couch watching TV. When I woke up around 300 a.m., the chair had moved just a few inches, but it had turned slightly facing me. I told myself it was my imagination, maybe. I placed it that way and forgot, but the next night it moved again closer to the couch, angled just enough to notice, and on the third night I heard a creak drag, the unmistakable sound of wood scraping slowly across floorboards. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw the chair facing the TV exactly where Grandma used to sit. By morning it was back in its place. I checked for drafty windows, sloped floors, earthquakes. Nothing still. I tried to ignore it, until the night I woke up, and the chair was in my bedroom. At the foot of my bed facing me. I nearly screamed, but something about it held me, like I wasn't supposed to fear it, like I was supposed to listen. That's when I remembered what Grandma used to say. I watch while others sleep, always watching, that's how I keep them safe. As a child I thought it was sweet, now it sounded different. I started having dreams, dark hallways, cold breath, a room full of rocking chairs, each one with someone sitting in it, not alive, not quite dead, and in the center, Grandma smiling, waving me over. Sit with me just for a while, one sit, one secret. I always woke up before I could reach her. But every time I dreamed, the chair was closer. When I woke up I finally told my mother. She got quiet, then said something ill, never forget. Your great-grandmother had a chair like that, said it was passed down, same stories, same dreams. She stopped sleeping in her last year, said if she sat in it too long, she heard people whispering beneath the cushion. I asked what happened to that chair. She paused. We thought it was burned, but it came back. Maybe it never left. That night I set up a camera. I needed proof. I pointed it at the chair and went to bed. When I checked the footage the next morning, the chair stood up, not lifted, stood, the legs bent like knees. It moved toward the camera and blocked the view. The last few seconds of the video were static and faintly like a breath I heard. Sit with me. I decided to get rid of it. Drove it to the edge of town to an old dump site. I left it beside the broken televisions and cracked tiles, but when I came home, it was already there. By the window waiting. The dreams got worse. Now Grandma whispered in my ear as I slept. One sit, that's all, then ill rest, and one night I couldn't resist. I sat. The moment I did, the room went silent. Everything stopped. No hum from the fridge, no cars outside, just stillness, and in that stillness, I heard it, a heartbeat, not mine, not human, coming from deep inside the chair. I tried to stand up, I couldn't. Hours passed, or minutes, I couldn't tell, and then I was freestanding in the kitchen. The chair was back in its place, but now it rocked slightly, as if someone was still in it, and when I looked down, there was an impression in the cushion. A deep one, too deep. I don't sit in it anymore. I don't touch it, but it still moves, still watches sometimes. I catch a faint smell of lavender and ash. Sometimes I swear I hear breathing not from me, and sometimes when I'm falling asleep I feel someone's arms wrap gently around me, old, cold, familiar. If you ever inherit something, especially something that seems to quiet, don't keep it out of guilt, because some furniture isn't passed down, it's passed back. When I moved into my new apartment, the previous tenant had left only one thing behind, a brass table lamp with a stained glass shade. It sat quietly in the corner of the bedroom unplugged. I didn't think much of it. The landlord said the tenant had left in a hurry, no forwarding address. He even offered to throw the lamp out, but I told him to leave it. It looked antique, heavy, expensive. I figured I could sell it later. For now I kept it as decoration the first night in the apartment I slept. Soundly, it had been a long day of moving and unpacking. I remember collapsing into bed around midnight, too tired to even plug in my phone. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the room was already faintly lit by the lamp it was on, but I hadn't plugged it in. The cord was still tucked behind the table, untouched. I laughed it off. Maybe I was groggy, maybe I plugged it in and forgot. Maybe it had some kind of battery still. I unplugged it completely and left it off for good the next night. The lamp was on again. This time I was sure I had double-checked it. No plug, no power source. The switch didn't even click. But at 3:12 a.m., I woke up to find the room bathed in that same golden glow. The stained glass shade cast swirling, warped shadows across the ceiling, as if something was moving just behind the light. I stared at the lamp for what felt like hours. Eventually, I drifted back to sleep. The following day, I removed the bulb, just in case. That night, I woke again, not from a dream. Not from a noise, but from light. The lamp glowed brightly, bulb still missing, cord still unplugged. I felt my stomach twist, and then the light flickered. Not randomly, in a rhythm like a heartbeat or a signal. I took a video. The flickering continued for 30 seconds, then the lamp dimmed, as if realizing it was being watched. When I reviewed the footage, my hand trembled. At 0:19 in the corner of the video behind me, in the reflection of the window, a woman was standing, pale hair hanging in strings, eyes wide and black. She wasn't in the room, only in the reflection. I left the apartment for a few days. Stayed with my brother across town. When I came back, the lamp was gone from the bedroom. I found it in the kitchen, placed neatly on the counter, glowing faintly, with a new light bulb inside one. I had never bought the cord, still unplugged. I threw it away. I wrapped it in 2 trash bags, drove it 20 minutes to the nearest landfill, and watched the garbage truck crush it. That night, I came home exhausted at 3:12 a.m. I woke up, the lamp was back on my nightstand glowing. I started sleeping with the lights on. Didn't matter. The moment I fell asleep, the main lights would shut off, and the lamp would turn on, only the lamp's soft golden light. Like a spotlight, then came the dreams, always the same, a room full of lamps, hundreds of them each, casting shadows that moved on their own. Not flickering, dancing in the center of the room. The woman from the window reflection stood with her back to me. Every night she got a little closer, every night a little more turned toward me. Until one night she looked directly at me. You see the light because I want you to. I woke up choking on air. The lamp was on. I tried selling it. No one would take it. The listings disappeared within minutes of posting. One man replied to my ad with just 4 words, "It found you. Run." I brought in a priest. He looked at it once and said, "This is not man-made anymore." He tried blessing it. The lamp shattered. Glass in every window. A wind from nowhere blew through the apartment. When the chaos ended, the priest had fainted. The lamp was glowing again, unharmed. Now, I don't sleep. I can't, because every time I do, I wake to see her a little closer. Last night, she was sitting at the foot of my bed, smiling, holding the lamp in her lap. She whispered, "Once it lights for you, it never stops. You belong to the light now." I write this at 2:53 a.m. My eyelids are heavy, but I know what happens at 3:12. That's when the lamp really glows. That's when the shadows crawl across the walls. That's when she touches my feet, and soon climbs into bed beside me. If you ever find a lamp that lights itself, no matter how beautiful the glow, don't keep it, because once it starts turning on at night, it's not showing you light, it's revealing what lives in the dark. When I first moved into the old cottage, I knew it needed work. The floors creaked, the windows stuck. The wallpaper peeled in long curling strips, but it was cheap and I needed quiet. The only thing I didn't like was the wardrobe. It stood in the bedroom, heavy, made of dark wood. The doors were carved with strange symbols I didn't recognize. Not decorative, more like scratch marks, deep and uneven. Like someone had dug their nails into the wood. I tried to move it, it wouldn't budge on the first night. I woke up to the sound of a creak. The room was cold. I sat up, and in the moonlight I saw its wardrobe door was open, just a crack enough to see the darkness inside. I was sure I had closed it. I got up, pushed the door shut, and latched it. It didn't even have clothes inside, just emptiness, a faint smell of dust, and something faintly metallic like rust. I went back to bed. The next night the same thing happened. Creak, cold air door ajar. This time it was open wider. I checked the latch. It wasn't broken. I tied the handles together with string. I barely slept. And still in the morning the door was wide open. The string had been untied neatly. Not torn or snapped, untied. I decided to nail it shut, just to be sure. I drove 3 thick nails into each door, then 3 more across the seam, each one hammered in deep. I tested its lid. As a rock. That night I finally slept soundly until 3:33 a.m. I woke up with a start. My room was freezing. I turned my head slowly toward the wardrobe. It was open. All the nails were on the floor bent. I moved out of the bedroom and started sleeping on the living room couch. Still, the next morning the wardrobe was open again, even though no one had touched it. I tried filming it with my phone, left the camera rolling all night. When I checked the footage in the morning, my stomach dropped. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the video turned to static for 5 full minutes. Then the image returned. The wardrobe was open, and in the corner of the frame, a pale hand was pulling away. I called the landlord. He said something that still echoes in my head. "You should have left it alone. It was sealed for a reason." He told me the last tenant had tried to destroy it, but it always came back. He said it had been in the house long before he bought it. Nobody remembered where it came from, but it had always been hungry. That night I tried to ignore it. I put on headphones, played music, closed my eyes tight. Still, I felt it, a cold draft, the faint sound of a hinge creaking, and then footsteps, soft, bare, walking slowly toward me. I opened my eyes and saw nothing. But the wardrobe was open again, and something had moved my blanket. I tried burning it. I soaked it in lighter fluid. Lit a match. The flames roared for 3 seconds, then died completely. Not even smoke. The wood looked untouched, only the carvings were deeper now, more like claw marks than scratches. I gave up and left the cottage for a week. When I returned, I found something waiting in my bed, a note written in my handwriting, but I didn't write it. "You opened it, now it knows. You close your eyes." It already climbed in that night. I bolted the wardrobe shut again, used chains, padlocks, then nailed a bookshelf in front of it. I watched it all night. 333 came and went. Nothing happened. I breathed, relieved, until I turned around and saw the second wardrobe in the hallway, identical, open, empty, waiting every time I lock it. Another one appears, sometimes in the bathroom, sometimes in the kitchen. Once I found one inside my closet. They're always nailed shut at first, then they creak open. Now I don't try to stop them. I just count how many appear. There are 6 in the house now, all open, all waiting. I hear whispers coming from them now, calling me by name, inviting me to just look inside. If you ever find an old wardrobe nailed shut, don't open it, don't try to move it, don't sleep near it. Because if you hear it creak open in the night, you're already part of it, and one day soon you'll wake up inside.